Hey guys, welcome to Basic CSS with PK, that's me, and this is titled the Crashiest CSS Crash Course because we're going to learn in about 30 minutes enough CSS for you to actually go into your website and tweak some stuff here and there. Some of the stuff might not be offered by the page builder or the theme that you're using, if it's WordPress that is. If you're using whatever else, there's still ways around it because you can enqueue style sheets easily. And we're going to talk about all of this, okay? And of course, you're going to learn how to find exactly what to select, what to target, and all of that kind of stuff in just about 30 minutes. That's pretty good. So it's very crashy. It's very crashy, and it's a CSS course, and it's a crash course. That's why this is the Crashiest CSS course. And my name is PK. I started almostinevitable.com, and I publish a lot of tutorials, mostly about Divi, some about WordPress, and I also have a podcast where I talk about the web design industry and a lot of other stuff that's involved in web design. So come on down, check it out. There's a lot of stuff that I have on that website, but for now, we're going to get into talking about CSS. Now, in order to understand how this works, you first need to understand the basic languages of the web. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because they will be covered in the course that I'm going to offer later on, but basically 4 languages, all right? That's HTML, CSS, PHP, and JavaScript, all right? Now, you don't need to understand everything, but just know what different functionalities they provide, and you will know where CSS stands. And even if you have a problem, you can talk to your dedicated developer on what language you think it's causing problems with. So HTML is the markup. It is how everything is structured. All the content is structured in a certain way, and HTML is the code around it that shows what is what. Okay? It wraps the code, wraps the content, that is. And CSS is the code that loads along with the HTML and tells the HTML how to display. It is the style sheet. So if I say this is styled, or you need to change the style, that means you need to change the CSS. You need to edit the CSS. You need to write the CSS so it will style the HTML. Good? All right. Now, I'm sure you've heard of dynamic content and all that kind of stuff because WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, they all work with databases, right? So you have a database, and PHP is a language that talks to the database and then delivers dynamic content. It can make dynamic content, and the end result is a fully rendered HTML. So what does that do? Like if you have WordPress, the PHP talks to the database, takes the database stuff, mixes it up, does what it needs to do, and then makes it an HTML structure, and then the CSS kicks in and designs it. Well, styles it, right? And of course JavaScript. JavaScript just lays there, it stays there with the HTML, and it does interactive stuff. Like if the user is doing something on the website, then the JavaScript is going to try to interact with the cursor, basically, the user. Like if you're typing something or if you're clicking on things, then JavaScript will sometimes take care of all the interactivity. Okay, cool. So now that you understand that, we're going to get into CSS. All right, now CSS is cascading style sheets. That's a name. That's what CSS means. Cascading style sheets. I'm going to get work. Yeah, okay. All right. So with cascading style sheets, we're going to get into a little bit of that, but technically, basically what it is you write a bunch of code and it's cascading, so it's from top to bottom. So it keeps on changing, updating it until it goes to bottom one. That's why it's cascading. All right? Now, that is important if you are writing the whole system, but you're not going to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to probably, most likely, going to be adding just a little bit of CSS to the whole structure, right? Because the theme will take care of most of the work. And all you're doing is most likely just tweaking, right? Writing whole systems, that's what I do. So you don't have to worry about that because that's not what this is, because this is basic CSS with, right? So, yes. So you're going to be writing a little bit of CSS here and there to tweak certain parts. And what you need to do is, and well, not what you need to do, what you're going to be doing is you're going to write some stuff, and that will load separately. So it will beat or have higher priority. Later on, we're going to learn, well, proper word is specificity, because it's more specific. So having better specificity to target a certain element and then style it the way you want, or change it the way you want. Okay, cool. Every one of my CSS courses has to talk about specificity because it is the most important part of writing CSS. But you don't have to worry about it too much because we're only going to talk about the parts that you need for you to tweak certain aspects of the website. Okay, so we won't go into too much detail, just enough. Now, this is how the specificity ladder goes. All right, you start from elements, HTML elements, and then classes, IDs, inline, and importance. Which now brings us to the question, how important are importance? All right, importance are, if somebody like that, you know, or some tutorial or some developer or whoever says, whoever advises you to use important in a CSS rule as the catch-all kind of method, then that person has no idea what CSS is supposed to be doing. It's because that is just forcing a style. All right, so let's go in. When we get to the screen, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. But just so you know, important just nuclear bombs everything, and nothing else works unless it's a stronger important. So you can imagine the kind of problems it can cause. A lot. It'll cause a lot of problems, and it's a lot of hassle, and it's very amateurish, and just really, if anybody advises that, don't listen to them because they don't know what they're talking about. So I hope that makes sense. As long as you understand that, everything that I'm going to explain on the screen will make more sense. Say it one more time. Element, class, ID, inline, and important. Okay? Cool. And this is an HTML file that I've just put together. It is sort of part of the file that I've been making in the course that I'm offering in the bundle later on. But anyways, so this is what it looks like. Now, when you're working inside WordPress, and if you're using a page builder or whatever, then you won't be making these HTML, you won't be writing the HTML code yourself. Here you can see a class being added to an HTML element. Now, HTML elements usually open with a tag like this, with a chevron on each side, and then it closes with a slash like that, and then inside the same chevron, right? Now, normally we get stuff like divs, and these are unordered lists, and this is a list item, this is an anchor tag, which means a link, and these are HTML elements. Now, when I say specificity, what I mean, especially, let's start with specificity. Remember how I explained the order of specificity? Now, specificity. Let's start with the lowest item. All right. So you heard me say element. That is this exactly like an element. Headers, articles, divs, H1, H2. These are all elements. HTML elements. What goes inside the HTML tag, right? And next you will get classes. Right? Now you can add a class to an HTML element by typing inside the HTML tag, right? So inside the tag you can add class. Let's add a class to this H1. You can just add it like this, class equals, and then quotation mark. This is the header. Now don't put in spaces. You can use hyphens or underscores. Those are all fine, but if you use a space, it becomes two classes, so don't do that. Okay, so you can see here this is text blue and text underline, so that is actually two classes that will help style this paragraph. All right, so yeah, no spaces. Cool. And next we have IDs. An ID is shown over here. It says ID equals. It's the same thing as class. It's written the same way as a class, but it's just used in different ways. Now the difference between IDs and classes, besides the specificity, where you can see the IDs are more important or have higher specificity than a class, the difference is if you have two IDs on the same page, it will not work. So a lot of people, when you have like a one-page scroll, like a one-page website, and you want to scroll from different section to section, what you can do is you can add it like this, like that, and then it will go to that part. All right, so you add that octothorpe in front, and then you put in the ID, and it will scroll to that part. That ID will scroll to the top of the browser. Okay, but if you have two of those, it won't work. The browser won't understand which one it's supposed to go to, so it's just broken. Now, this happens a lot when you, because I've seen a lot of people do this online and they always have trouble with this. This happens when people duplicate sections, like they want, if you're using a page builder, you can set different styles, like in a tablet size. You can preview in a tablet and then add tablet styles. Then you can preview in a mobile, then add mobile styles. And sometimes people add an ID into the page builder and then they duplicate that part, cancel one out on a specific size, and then use a different layout on a different size. And the problem is, in the HTML, you get the same ID, so it won't scroll, which is why either duplicate inside that ID, or, I don't like that, but that's a good way of going around it, or what you can do is just style it properly and use that one ID to style it differently, use different styles. Okay, now that's how you use IDs, and IDs can actually get you to another page and go there as well. So let's say you have, like, for example, an About Us page, if I spell it properly, About Us page like that, and then you put an octothorpe there and then put in the ID. It'll still get you to that About Us page, and then same domain, that's why you don't have the domain here, same domain, About Us, and then go to that ID. All right, you can do that as well. But IDs are really good also when styling because it has higher specificity than a class, so it's really good. Next you have inline, right? So that's inline. Inline styles are like this. That is an inline style. Okay, so you can actually write inside the HTML tag, and you can put in style equals and then open and close a quotation mark, and then put in whatever CSS you want. And that is exactly the same as actually targeting that element however you want to, and then adding this kind of stuff in there. Okay, so that works as well. It's inline styles. And of course, the one that I not only hate, but is also very bad practice, the important. All right, the infamous importance. Now I'll show you how importance work. Whatever you do, it'll still beat the inline styles. All right, and once we get to this, I'll explain when to use it and when not to. All right, because of course it exists. There is a use for it. All right. Okay, so let's look at how specificity works, and of course also how the cascade works. All right, so let's try. Oh yeah, I should actually explain this. So a good way to learn specificity is to think about it as a simple matrix, right? Now, what you do is you can take that idea, and I'm going to be duplicating this line. This is I'm using Sublime Text, and I'm going to be duplicating by holding down Command-Shift-D, like that. Could be Control-Shift-D, I think. Control and Command are interchangeable if you're in Mac and Windows, so I think that's how that works. Yeah, this is Sublime Text, so you can go to Sublime, just Google Sublime Text, and that's where you can get it. Now if I can spell, there you go. Yeah, that's where you get it. That's this. You can download it from here. Cool. You don't have to, but it's just, I'm just explaining. All right, so let's say, for example, let's look at this one of the CSS rules. All right, so header, this guy. All right, so this guy here, as you can see, has it shows you the display and it gives it a background, right? A very light gray background, as you can see over here, because you know the hex code is very light, it's a very high number. All right, so header is just an element, as you can see over here. So that means this has a specificity of 1. What do I mean by 1? It means that there's only one HTML element that opens the curly brackets. Okay, I can do something like this. For example, I can put in body in front of that, and that means if there's a space in between, that means it is inside. It is a child element. All right, so you see body, and then body closes here. Oops, yeah, there you go. I just closed that whole thing right there. So body opens and closes, and if you open it up, its header is inside body, right? Header is a child element of body, which is why there's a space. Okay, if you don't have a space, that means it's on the same level like these guys. Okay, so text blue, text underline, as you can see over here, that if you want to target this paragraph here, that guy, then you need to put them on the same line without a space. Okay, and then you can target that directly. All right, so that if you do this, right, if you add body and then space header, that's 2 HTML elements. That gives it a specificity of 2 right there. All right, okay, now let's look at this guy. All right, that's header, and then you have a class. Class is expressed with a dot. IDs are expressed with an octothorpe, okay, or hashtag or pound sign or sharp, but octothorpe is, I think, the proper name for that glyph. So you have the class here. So there's one HTML element, and then you have one class. So that you can see header here, and then you can see this class, which is a child element of that header, right? So that works well. Okay, so that means that we have one HTML element and then we have one class. All right, now this is a 2 here and this is a 1 and 1 here, right? Which one beats the other? Now, of course, these two are not targeting the same thing. Let's make it that way. All right, so what I'm going to do, just to make it a little easier for you to tell the difference, I'm going to do that and do this. Cool. All right, so these are both targeting this guy. All right, they're both targeting this guy, the body space header and the header this. Now the container is something totally different, so we won't worry about that right now because it's targeting this div that's underneath header, so that's different, right? So you have body space header, which is the header HTML element, which is a child of body, and we have header no space dot this, which means it's a header with a class. Okay, so it's a classy header. Sorry. So which one wins? Now, if we were, for example, going to try something like this, background and then red. All right, that means that we can tell which one is which, right? Let's save this, let's save that, and let's refresh this. And depending on which it is, we're going to see either this the same color or red, right? So there you go, it's red. Why? Because I'll take that out, so we don't need that. This, yep, so nothing's there. Oh, by the way, if you use Sublime Text, they ask you if you want to purchase, say just put in cancel, and you can use it for as long as you want. I haven't paid for this. I use it every day, so I probably should, but yeah. All right, so you can see it's red. Now, remember how I said it's cascading? Does cascading work? Well, let's move this up here. All right, so header dot this is above body header. So that means this is run first and then this comes later in the cascade. So this must beat it, right? Let's see what happens. Save this. If you save it, you can see that little circle going away. So save that. There you go. That circle goes away. And let's refresh. And it's just red. Why is it all stretching all the way? Because I took out the width 200 and I made it a block. So don't worry about that, okay? So it's still red. Why is it still red? It's because it has higher specificity. All right, now the way that specificity works is no matter what you put in here, you can put in like 19 over here and 0 over here. This will still win. That will still win, okay? It's like a kill switch, all right? Sudden death, however you want to express it or name it. I don't know. As long as there's one class that beats this, then it's just gonna beat however many elements you have. All right. So even if we have that, right, it's gonna still beat it. Let's say, for example, you have one here and then you have one here. Which is higher? Well, you have the same class. You have one class on both sides, and then you have two elements. So once you're done with comparing these guys, right? If they're the same, then they're going to go to the next element, and then there's one more element here than over here, so this guy's going to win. Okay? Now that is a really, really good approach to how you edit your CSS, because the page builder is going to give you some stuff. All right, it's going to give you, let's say, for example, header container width 200. All right, and you know what? Let's try something like this. All right, let's say you want to change. Let's say this has come from the page builder. All right, this is what the page builder rendered in terms of CSS, and you want to beat that. So you take the same thing. You take the same thing, and you add one more HTML element or a class, whatever you want, right? So just type in body and save that, and you win. Okay? So all you need to do is just add one more thing to that CSS rule, and you get higher specificity because you're going to go with the exact same thing, but then add one more. Okay? And that's how you do it. All right? So let's say, for example, let's try something else, right? Let's say you see this guy. All right? Now the the page builder has rendered it as, let's give it, so here's main content. Let's give that a background of blue. All right, and what you want to do, I'll make it even a little more challenging. Let's give it a body because it's inside the body. There we go. Yep. You know what? Let's make it a little more interesting than that. All right. So main content div container. All right. Nope. Main content container. Well, I should have done it over here. Main content container. There we go. Background blue. Right. And we want to, and I'm sure you can tell where I'm going with this. I'm going to take that out just so I can type it again. We want to change the background of, I'll save this, change the background of that, because that's too blue. That looks way too blue. So what we're going to do is make it this color. All right. Now, the target, this CSS is targeting this guy. Okay. So what you need to do is you will find this in your, when you get into the inspector. All right, we'll talk about inspectors in a minute. And you take that guy and you change it to what you want, and we'll do something like that, right? And all you need to do is just look at the code, look at the HTML that's rendered, and just make it just a little bit more specific. Right now you can see this guy is 1 and 1. There's no elements. It's just one ID and one class, right? So if you want anything that's any higher, at least a bit higher, you can just do this. That's the easiest way to do it, right? So what you do is you just add a div. Save that, and it becomes great. All right. Now, why is this better than using important? I'll show you. Okay. Now, before we get into that, let's get into inlines. All right. So inline styles are like this. All right, now inline styles are like this. Now, why is this here? It's because for two reasons. One, these are sometimes handy to have when you are typing in HTML directly. All right, and I don't normally like this, but like I said, it is sometimes handy. And also a really, really important thing that really helps is that JavaScript uses inline styles. JavaScript adds inline styles to HTML elements. That's why when you use the classic builder in WordPress, the TinyMCE editor, then you get these guys popping up inside the HTML. jQuery does this a lot. So what happens is, for example, jQuery can add an extra class somewhere, or what it can do is it finds, let's say for example, you add some jQuery, tell it to find the text-blue class and then add a style like this. And that's what it does. This happens a lot. All right. Now, even in, for like example, let's use Divi, because I'm sure a lot of you out there use Divi, especially in this summit. Let's say you have the header, right? The header, the navigation bar. If you have one of those, Divi jQuery is the Divi JavaScript is going to find the header, the navigation bar, and get the measurements, and then start the content right below it. And it adds the padding into the top div of the home of the body element. And those are just a few examples. jQuery loves adding styles inside the HTML. Now, the problem for us is that, well, the good thing is that it's easy to add, but the problem for us is that you cannot override it with an ID or anything. The only way you can override it is using an important. So because inline styles are up here, but we can't add an inline style, especially if it's like in the header, right? If it's in the header, for example, and there's an inline style that's added by jQuery, we can't change the HTML rendering that comes from the theme or the page builder. So the only way that we can override those styles for some reason would be using an important. All right, so that is pretty much the only reason that you would use importance. Because if you don't do that, if you don't reserve importance for, lack of a better term, the important cases, yeah, right? What you're going to end up doing is, if you start adding important to everything, like I told you not to, right? Let's say you do this. If I can find the I, okay, there we go. If I can find the P, all right, there you go. Yeah, yay, there we go. Important. I'm going to save that just so it's easy to copy that, just so it's easy to use. All right, so if you do that, it's going to override everything. All right. The only way to override an important is to use another important that has higher specificity. All right, like that. So then what's the use of using an important? Everything is going to have an important, and it's just going to be a mess. Everything, if you're trying to lock down things with a hammer and nail, and then the other guy is just not getting the attention it needs, you have to lock that down with a hammer and nail again, and then everything becomes hammer and nail. After important, you can't have super important. You can't do this. All right, so it's useless, right? So that's why you have to use these in a very specific case, which is, like I said, only to override an inline CSS that has been rendered by some jQuery or JavaScript. Well, same thing, jQuery or JavaScript, same thing. Okay, does that make sense? It should, because now that you know how to write this and how to add that little tweak, let's look at how, let's go back to me talking to you, and we can talk about the next part of this presentation. Okay. Next, we need to talk about the inspector. Now, using the inspector is very important, because if you're making websites, or if you're tweaking websites or working on websites, the most important piece of software that you're using when making websites is the browser. What else? Because everything you're doing has to work in the browser. You're not making brochures, you're making a website. and it's supposed to render properly inside the browser. So, the browser is important. Now, of course, there's a lot of different browsers, and the most common is Chrome, and there's even other browsers are based off of Chrome. It's a strand called Chromium, and it's all based off of Chrome. So most browsers are based off of Chrome. You have Chrome, you have Firefox, and you have Safari. They're pretty much similar, and as long as you don't go into Internet Explorer 11, then it won't really matter. So you have the three modern browsers. You have those browsers, and they all have inspectors. But we're going to talk about Firefox because Firefox has what I think the best inspector. Firefox is the easiest for you to test and develop. So I strongly suggest Firefox, and that's what we're going to use. Let's go into the inspector for starters. Now, if you right click on the screen, it's anywhere you want, you'll get an inspect element, and you open that up, and here you go. All right, there you go. All right. Now, I've heard from some people that it's a little confusing from, what is it? Chrome, sorry. A little confusing because the colors for the content padding, border, and margin are different from Chrome. But I don't know, I'm used to this, so oh well. Alright, so a few things that you really could use is if you want to lock down, for example, a hover action, right? So let's say, for example, I have, let's look for an HTML. Alright. Alright, now I'm going to work directly in the browser for us in a second. Alright, so let's say you have a LI. So this is how WordPress HTML is written. It's in menu and then menu item, and then you have a anchor tag inside. So let's take this guy. Alright, so this is how you would target that. You would go menu item, and then space means inside, right? Underneath child item. So there you go. Open, close a curly bracket, and let's give it a color. Now, if you want to change the text color, it's not text color, it's not font color, it's color, right? It's, some people confuse this so much, but it's just color. All right, so let's make it red. All right, let's save that, and let's refresh this. There we go. Now, a little trick that you can use when you refresh things is if you go to the settings. I think I need to find it. Alright, here we go. Disable HTTP cache when the toolbox is open is very useful. Whenever you're developing or whenever you're testing a website, turn off all the caching plugins and all the settings that generate caches. Turn all of that off, and also turn this on so it will disable anything anyways. Alright, so all the caching should be turned off when you're developing and when you're troubleshooting or working on or changing the styling of whatever. Okay, so that really helps. And I also use the dark theme because the light theme blinds my eyes. All right, so here we go. It says color red, right? Now, normally in Chrome, you'd have to just practice, you know, stuff like this in the inspector like this, right? But what we can do, one thing that I found really useful from Firefox is you can actually take this. You go to Style Editor, click on plus, and this actually loads a new CSS file for you directly in real time. Okay, which is really cool, right? So let's say, for example, we're doing this. We take that guy, and we don't need this because what we're going to do is we're going to look at hover. All right. Now I'm just trying to use a lot of different things in here because not to confuse you, but to at least show you different instances of how this works. And also just because this is a crash course, I can at least add hover here, right? So we're going to add a color green, right? Now it doesn't seem like anything, right? But let's just add font size. And you can see that it just changed in real time, which is really cool. So if you can make this work, then this is all you need to copy and paste into your theme, and you know it's going to work, right? So it's really good for testing. All right, so as you can see, I added a hover here. So when I hover my mouse, it's going to turn green. Ah, there we go. right? So now what you can do is you can take that, paste it in here, save that, and refresh this. And you don't have any extra styles, but that CSS that we just added here works, right? So a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people just really having a lot of trouble with CSS that people have either written for them or what they're trying to test. And it's so cumbersome when you try to add it to the theme and then you have to refresh the cache and all of that. So what you can do directly, like I said, is go to settings, disable the HTTP cache, because you should, and also turn off all the cache plugins that you have, and then go to style editor, add a new style sheet, and then test your CSS in here. Okay, and if it works, you know you got a winner. You can save that into the theme, and oh, don't refresh because you're gonna lose it. All right, so you can save it into your theme and then refresh the whole page, and you'll see that it will work properly. Okay, all right, so I think that helps. Let's get back to me talking to you with my face. So let's get back to that. So let's try this on a real website. Let's find the piece of code that we need and find the selector and modify that selector, add the new CSS rules, and then add it to the website, and let's see if that works. Okay? Okay, now we're at an actual page that I've built in the past, and here is, I'm using the Divi Builder in this case, and this is what it looks like on the front end. Now, I've had someone ask me to help him build a hero section, and this is what I did. And let's try changing, let's say for example, what should I do? The size of this text. Now if I click on that and go for open the inspector, then I get it zeroed in like this, highlighted like that, and it will find the right code, the CSS code, and show it right here, right? Now, you have font size 54 right here, and we are going to change that. Let's go for, I don't know, 55. No, I'm just kidding. Let's try something like 22. All right, so of course you can test it right here, like a lot of people do if they're using Chrome. But what we're going to do is we are going to test it before we try it, and then we're going to test it in the style editor. All right, so as you can see here, this is the whole selector. That's a very complicated selector. Now, sometimes selectors might have commas in between them. That means it's a new selector. You can start a new selector with a comma. All right, if it doesn't have a comma, then it's just one selector. All right, so let's click on that whole thing, copy that, go to style editor, add a new one. All right, paste that, and open, close a bracket. All right, don't have to worry about how long it is. We don't need to worry about that at all. Okay, so all we need to do is just make it just even a little bit more specific, right? Now these guys are connected to divs. These are all divs. That's a div, that's a div, that's a div, that's a div. And as you can see, this H1, H1 is an element, but code inner right here, code inner is a div. So we can do that. Or ETPB section on top with the blue hero class is also a div. Right here, right? So you can see there's a space here, there's a space here, but they're on the same level. So that means different classes, and they're on the same level. So you see them stuck together here, right? As you can see right there. Yeah. So this is a div. All we need to do, because let's try this. All we need to do is just add a div in front, right? And font size 22 pixels, and there you go. All right, now does this mean, because it's loaded in the style editor, it always gets highest priority in the cascade? But let's try copy that, add that to theme options. I would normally suggest using a child theme, but in this case, for people needing quick tweaks, then this is fine. All right, so we don't need to worry about that. That's for something else, obviously. Paste that, what we just copied from here. Yep, that goes right there. Save that. As you can see, my CSS minification is off, and in the builder, the static CSS and all that is off. Okay, All right, so I just added that, saved it, and let's refresh this, okay? And there you have it. Exactly what we want, right? All you need is to know that you need just one little thing, anything, just one little thing to override the original CSS because of specificity, all right? You don't need to go around adding importance or anything. Just add that one div there and you're done. All you need to do is just make sure you're adding it right, all right? So if you see a class like this, ETPB section, and that's how the code was written, then just add a div in front of it with no space because it's on the same level, right? That div and that ETPB section is on the same level, so no space, just add it right there and you're done. All right, so that's how you can edit and tweak things really well without breaking the website or without causing more problems later on. Because if you start adding importance for everything and don't know what you're doing, then whichever developer has to come in and try to fix it, and he's gonna pull his hair out. All right, so you don't want that unless you want a bald developer. In which case, still don't do that. Okay. All right, so I hope this helped, and let's get back to me talking to the camera. In addition to getting the Summit package, which includes beginner CSS with PK, the crashiest of the crash courses. In addition to the course that is included in the package, you can also come down, and if you want to learn more, in depth, and you think it's something that you're interested in, or at least your developer can learn from, then come down to almostinevitable.com and check out the courses page. I have a few courses that I think you'll really love. A lot of people have learned a lot really well from it, and some of them have gone from absolutely no knowledge of CSS to actually typing and coding out a whole website top to bottom with all CSS. People have done that from my courses, and they learn a lot. They can code properly. My whole idea of the courses and everything that I teach on my website is learn it properly. All right, that's why I keep saying there are bad practices and there are good practices. I always try to stick to good practices, and that's what you're going to learn, and that's why your code will work a lot better if you learn from me. Some of my courses are about Divi. I also have other courses coming up. The beginner course that's in the bundle is not just for Divi. It goes over all the major page builders, Divi, Visual Composer, Oxygen, Elementor, and Beaver Builder. So it goes over the major ones, and I have short videos on how to use the CSS that you learned with them, and it all works well. But I also have Divi specific CSS courses, and there will be more higher level courses as we go on, and also a lot of interactive new style courses that I'm planning. So keep an eye out, sign up for the newsletter, and check out the courses. Now, if you are in Australia or some whatever other country, it doesn't really matter, but because I know that this summit that this video is part of is mainly in Australia, the exchange rate, right? The exchange rate is not the best. So what you can get directly from me, from watching this video, is this coupon. All right? Now this coupon works with everything. All right? Exchange 2020 works with anything in the cart, and it gives you 30% off, which is pretty much the same in the end after the exchange rates, the same as in US and Australian dollars. And of course, that 30% off works with anybody else, even if you are in the States. It doesn't really matter. It's just 30% off. All right? So it's valid for a month. So you use that if you want, and you'll get whatever. So it's basically trying to match the Australian dollar to the US because, like I said, there's a lot of Australian viewers here, so we're gonna try that. And also, doesn't hurt to offer, a discount to anybody else in any other country, so it's fine, right? Yeah. So if you want to learn CSS and all kinds of other stuff properly, either sign up for the newsletter so you'll get notified of all the new stuff that's coming out, all the tutorials and courses, or come on down, purchase some stuff. So I hope that helped. I hope you learned enough to be motivated to actually go into your website and try these things out because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it so much that this is what I do all the time. So it really helps a lot, even as a designer, or if you want to get into a little bit more developer friendly, a more developer centric approach to web design. So I hope it wasn't too hard to understand. I hope you learned a lot, and thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the comments. All right? Thanks. Bye.